make a Neapolitan cake, but not just any Neapolitan cake, easy Neapolitan cake. And it's easy because it starts with a white cake mix. And I'm just gonna make this according to package instructions. So 3 egg whites, 1/3 cup of oil, and a cup of water. So now I'm gonna use a hand mixer to totally blend this together. Okay. I like to see how far I can pull the beaters out while they're still mixing to try to get as much batter off as possible. Okay, so now I am going to divide the white cake batter into 3 bowls. And I think you can probably guess why. Now, of course, you can make your favorite white batter from scratch if you want to, but how quick was that? It just went lickety-split. So I'm gonna leave one plain. I'm gonna turn one pink by adding freeze-dried strawberries. So look at this, Alex. Basically, you just buy these little freeze-dried strawberries in the snack aisle and then put them into a food processor and just grind them into a powder. And it makes it the most intensely strawberry flavored cake batter. Okay, so for the chocolate, I'm just gonna do a heaping tablespoon of cocoa. And what I like about that is the cocoa is unsweetened, so it makes the cake pretty intensely chocolate. It's not overly sweet. Okay, so to bake the cake, I'm gonna use a loaf pan. It's gonna come out kind of a marbled cake. I'll start with the chocolate, and I'm just gonna drop in a scoop. And honestly, there's nothing scientific about this, so. And then drop a second scoop just like off to the side and diagonal, and then grab a strawberry scoop, plop, and another strawberry scoop. And then when you use the same scoop, it kind of just naturally drags the other cake mix along with it. And then the white cake, plop, and another one, plop. And then you see where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah.
You just keep going until you have just kind of blobs of cake everywhere. All right, look at that. It doesn't look like much. And you don't want to spread it out. You want to just leave it in blobs like this. It's gonna poof up quite a bit, and then we'll see what's inside. So I'm gonna bake this at 350 degrees for 45 minutes, then I'll take it out and let it cool. See you back here then. Okay, so the cake is out of the oven, and it's hard to imagine what's inside, but I cannot wait to cut into this. And I have a true confession to make. I forgot I was gonna put a little drop of red food coloring in the strawberry version, but I forgot, but that's okay. But I just like to be upfront and honest with you guys about all of my foibles. So I'm gonna make a beautiful glaze to go over the cake, and it's basically just a ganache. So I'm just pouring hot cream over milk chocolate chips, and I'm gonna wait just a second and let the chocolate start to soften. Okay, so look, Alex, you see that ganache, how easily that came together? And it's milk chocolate, but it still looks so beautiful and rich. Okay, this is where the fun begins. So get a pretty platter, preferably one that has a little bit of a rim to it. And I'll get the cake on there. And then, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here goes the glaze. And you can really douse it, or you can try to sort of be artsy about it. Oh, yum! Oh my word. Okay, so you take it to the table and serve it like this, but you ready to see it?
Yes, I want to see the inside.
I wonder how impressive, what if it's not impressive at all? What will we do?
I'm gonna eat it anyways.
That's right, it'll still be delicious, okay? Oh, well, you can see where it might have helped to put a little bit of the red food coloring, but it's gonna taste really intensely strawberry, I know that. Yeah, do you wanna try a bite?
Yes.
Here. I can make that happen for you. Let's see if we taste the pink, even if we can't see it. There you go.
Oh, that's for me?
That's for you.
Mmm. I can taste it.
Mm-hmm.
I can taste the strawberry.
Definitely put red food coloring in the strawberry so you can see it, but delicious. I love it. A Black Forest chocolate cake for 2. This is so rich and delicious. I'm just using frozen pitted cherries, and I'm gonna make sort of a syrupy cherry mixture. So I'll add a 1/4 cup of sugar, and then I'm gonna break out the hard stuff. Lad and I are gonna party. A couple of tablespoons of cherry liqueur, and then I'm gonna turn on the stove and make sure the sugar is all mixed up with the liqueur. So I'm gonna bring it to a gentle boil and let it cook for about 6 minutes until it's reduced and thick. Now the cake I'm making also has a lot of delicious cream, so I'm gonna go ahead and whip it. I'm adding a cup of really cold cream to the mixer, along with a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and a splash or 2 of vanilla. And then I'll turn on the mixer, and I'm gonna whip the cream until it has stiff peaks. Okay, the cream is all whipped, the cherries are all cooked, the cake is baked and completely cooled and ready to layer up. But before I do that, let me tell you how I made it. There are 5 steps to making the cake. First, the dry mix, and that's a cup of all-purpose flour, a cup of sugar, and a pinch of salt stirred together. Second, the wet mix, and for this, I poured a 1/4 cup of buttermilk into a pitcher, added 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, a large beaten egg, and mixed everything together. Then third, this is the chocolate mix, and it's a stick of salted butter and 2 heaping tablespoons of cocoa powder. I whisked them together in a pan, added 1/2 cup of water, brought it to a boil, and cooked it for 10 seconds. Then step 4 is where it all comes together. So I poured the chocolate mixture over the dry mixture and stirred it for a minute to cool, added the egg mix, and stirred it until it was all smooth. Finally, step 5. With the batter done, it was all about baking. So I poured the batter into a 1/4 sheet pan lined with parchment. Then I put it into a 350-degree oven for 15 minutes, then took it out and let it cool completely. Okay, now I get to turn this chocolate cake into a beautiful layered Black Forest cake. So I'm gonna turn it out onto the cutting board and peel off the parchment. And then I'm gonna cut this cake into 4 equal pieces. So I'll cut it in half, and then I'll cut each half in half. I'm gonna get the cake stand. So then I'm gonna grab some cream, probably about 1/4 of the cream. This is gonna be such a cute little layer cake. I am very excited. And then I'll spread the cream to the edges. You don't have to be perfect. All right, so I'll just grab a few cherries at a time and drop them on top of the cream. Okay, and then the next layer of cake. And I'm actually putting the cake upside down. It just kind of makes it a little bit more stable. Look at that cherry syrup pouring out of the side of there. So pretty. Okay, another 1/4 of cream. Okay. You see where I'm going with this, right? Some more of the cherries. You could have some fun and do blackberries or blueberries instead of cherries. Another layer. And there goes the cherry juice. I'm in heaven just putting this together. I'm gonna grate on some chocolate. You can do chocolate curls if you're feeling fancy. You can do colored sprinkles. Anything goes. Okay, that looks so good. All right, Black Forest birthday cake for 2. I'm gonna pop it in the fridge and it'll be all ready for our celebration. But before I do that, I'm just gonna admire it for a second. Todd just turned 12 and my nephew Caleb just turned 17. I cannot believe we're at this point. Missy's hosting a big birthday party for the 2 of them. Caleb got to choose what we're having for dinner at Missy's. He picked pulled pork, which is his absolute favorite food. And that meant Todd got to choose the cake. He's a big fan of confetti cake, and the more layers, the better. I've just greased and floured 3 cake pans. And now I'll whip up the dry ingredients for the batter. It's cake flour, then all-purpose flour, baking powder, and some salt. Then I just whisk it together. I swear I say the same thing every year about this time. I cannot believe my baby Todd is a year older. It seems like literally yesterday that I was carrying him around on my hip. He was the cutest baby, cutest little boy. And I can say the same thing for Caleb. He was the first boy of the family, the first male grandchild. Oh my gosh, he was cute. He had the most adorable face. It's kind of nice that Todd and Caleb are 5 years apart. They get along so well. Todd really looks up to Caleb. Caleb taught him how to say, yes ma'am, yes sir. He's a pretty good role model. The dry ingredients are whisked together. Now I've got 3 sticks of butter and 2 1/4 cups of sugar that I've been beating in the mixer. And now I'll add in some egg whites. I have 6 egg whites total, and I'm gonna add about 2 at a time. The secret is to beat the mixture well after each addition so air gets worked in. Then, since it's a vanilla cake, some vanilla extract. And the next step is to add the dry and wet mixes, starting with the dry, then the wet, more dry, more wet, more dry, and the final batch of the wet. I'll beat all that together until it's just incorporated. Okay, that's the batter almost ready. Just one final ingredient. This is such a beautiful, basic white cake batter. To turn it into confetti cake batter, I'm gonna add rainbow sprinkles, a whole cupful, which is a lot, but this is a 3-layer cake. I like to fold it in manually instead of putting it in the mixer. Sometimes the mixer can break up the sprinkles a little bit and cause a mess. You want it to be a little bit of a mess, but a controlled mess. I think that is looking great. I'll get the same amount of batter, give or take, in each of the 3 pans. We often have a joint birthday party for Caleb and Todd, and they have never minded it. Everybody gets along. The young kids hang out with the old kids. The old kids don't mind it, which is really nice. The 2 birthday boys are actually hanging out together this afternoon. It's nice that they're 5 years apart. They really enjoy each other. Okay, cakes are ready to go into the oven. They're gonna bake at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Okay, the cakes are baked and cooled. I'm just gonna let them rest while I make the frosting. Now, typically I would be tempted to make a super easy buttercream with powdered sugar and butter, but since it's a special occasion, I'm gonna make traditional Swiss buttercream. It's a little bit trickier, but oh my goodness, it's worth every second. I just added 8 egg whites to a bowl over simmering water, and I'll add 2 cups of sugar. And now it's time to start the whisking process, starting by hand. It takes a couple of minutes of whisking for the mixture to warm up and the sugar to dissolve. And the next step is to put the sugar and egg whites into the mixer and let it go to work, whisking for about 5 minutes. Time's up, so the speed goes up to medium-high, and I'll give it another 7 minutes. Now with the speed on medium-low, I'll add unsalted room temperature butter, cut into pieces a bit at a time, beating well in between. Then turn up the speed to high to get it just right. The last thing to add is the vanilla, just a teaspoon. And then I need to let this mix for another 5 minutes. I cannot imagine whipping this by hand. Boy, am I glad we live in the modern age. We're having a joint birthday party for Caleb and Todd at Missy's house tonight, and I get to make the official birthday cake. Todd picked it. It's gonna be a 3-layer confetti cake. I'm gonna get it frosted now. I'll start by putting a cup of this absolutely beautiful buttercream right on top. I sliced off the very top of each layer just to make sure the cake is super even. Now it's just about spreading each layer with frosting and coating the outside. I spread about a cup of the frosting on each layer and build up through the cakes, ending with the 3rd one bottom side up to get a good flat surface. Then I spread the rest of the frosting over the top and sides of the cake. An offset spatula is my weapon of choice. Okay, that's it for the frosting. Now I'll move on to decorating. I'm gonna do a little special something with sprinkles. I made a stencil with a T for Todd and a C for Caleb. I used wax paper, and I'll just set it carefully on top and grab the rest of the sprinkles that I didn't use. And I'm gonna be really careful and sprinkle the sprinkles right inside the letters. Todd and Caleb are hanging out, and Hallie and Paige are also hanging out. They're gonna run get balloons for the party later. It's really nice to have kids that can drive. They can run all these errands for us. Okay, I'm just gonna lightly press to make sure the sprinkles stay put when I take the stencil off. And I'll use a brush to just brush away the excess. Okay, give them one final press. And then I'll grab the wax paper and carefully peel it off. And we've got a sprinkly T and a sprinkly C. I've just got to get the cake into a cake carrier. I sure hope it makes it to Missy's in one piece. This is it, Missy.
Oof.
Should we just split them in half and go for it?
Okay.
Let's call them in. All right, you guys make a wish. Ready, set, go. Ready, baby? Get your plate.
I do.
Skillet chocolate cakes. I'm just sizzling some butter in a saucepan. I'm actually making the icing first because I want to give it time to cool. So to the butter, I'll add 3 tablespoons of cocoa, and they're rounded tablespoons. And then some milk. And I'm gonna whisk this together until it starts to gently bubble. Okay, this chocolate mixture is good to go. So now I just have to mix all of this in with a whole bunch of sifted powdered sugar. So it literally just goes right in. All right, this icing is done. Everything's mixed together. So I'm gonna sit it over here to the side, let it cool while I get the cake going. I can almost make this in my sleep. It is so simple. So the dry ingredients come first, and that is flour and sugar, equal parts, and a pinch of salt. And I'll stir the dry ingredients together, and then I'll mix the wet ingredients in a separate pitcher. And it's buttermilk, a little splash of vanilla, baking soda, and an egg. And then I'll beat this together. All right, so that's the dry ingredients, the wet ingredients, and now I'll make the chocolate mixture for the cake. Lots of chocolate in this recipe. So I've got another saucepan of melted butter, and I'm adding 2 tablespoons of cocoa. This is very deep, rich, unsweetened cocoa. And I have some boiling water hanging out, and then it gets poured in, and I'll turn the heat up and whisk it just until it starts to boil. I like to pour this mixture into the dry ingredients just to cool down the chocolate. So even just a few stirs kind of gets rid of that heat a little bit. So now comes the buttermilk egg mixture. And I'll just kind of stir gradually as it gets worked in. So now I'm gonna pour it into individual iron skillets. So I'll just pour an equal amount of batter in each skillet. Okay, these cakes are gonna bake at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. So the cakes are out of the oven. They look incredible, deep, rich, and chocolatey. And I have the cooled icing in a piping bag. So evenly distribute it among the cakes. This is the star of my first sweet recipe. It's a store-bought frozen pound cake, and it is going to make a layered tiramisu cake super easy, much easier than the original tiramisu. So I'm starting by slicing the pound cake into 3 slices horizontally. This is such a great trick. Anytime you want to make a really luscious, flavorful, layered cake. These pound cakes have been around since the 70s, if I remember correctly, and they are so handy to have in your freezer. So that's the cake, and now I'm gonna make a coffee syrup, and it is very simple. I've just got some hot coffee, and it's pretty strong, and I'll just add some brown sugar while it's still hot, and then whisk this together, and it's gonna be wonderful. All right, so I'll put that aside. That's the coffee syrup. And of course, tiramisu has a very creamy component. And for that, I'm using cream cheese. I'm gonna add some sifted powdered sugar. I sifted it so there wouldn't be many lumps at all. And then you can add vanilla or my current favorite form of vanilla, paste. You get these little flecks of vanilla caviar throughout, and it is just incredible. To me, it seems to taste even better than vanilla extract. That might be like placebo effect, I don't know, but I'm convinced it's even better than the extract. All right, I'm gonna whip this for just about a minute until the cream cheese is really light and fluffy. Okay, that is looking great. So next comes the heavy cream. So I'll pour it in. With regular tiramisu, instead of cream cheese, it's usually mascarpone cheese. But I wanted to do a version where you can find everything at your local grocery store, and cream cheese is a really great substitute. All right, I'm gonna turn on the hand mixer and whip this until peaks start to form. And while I do that, let's go check in on Lad. He's out in the hayfield today. Lad's got a great team. Our nephew Caleb and cowboys Josh, Dell, Jackie Joe, and Cameron. Lad's in his tractor loading the bales. The guys are hauling the hay, and my brother-in-law Tim is stacking it.
Half the work, it seems, revolved around just getting everything organized and getting going.
It's the last pasture they have left to haul this year, and they'll be stacking hay at various locations around the ranch, ending at our house.
We always haul it around to wherever we're going to use it from in the winter and get it stacked up and put up where it's easy to use in the winter. So that's kind of our job right now, is to get it all hauled off the field, hauled to a place where it'll be usable this winter.
All right, so all tiramisu has layers. So I'm gonna take the 3 layers of cake. I'll take one first. And what I did was I took the loaf pan that the cake was sold in, and then I draped some plastic wrap in over the sides, and the cake is going inside the plastic wrap. So put it cut side up, because I'm gonna grab this really yummy coffee syrup, and I'm gonna really carefully pour a third of it over the cake. And of course, you want that cake to really absorb all that incredible coffee flavor. That's what tiramisu is all about. So this beautiful cream cheese whipped cream mixture is in a big old piping bag. So I'm gonna pipe just a little zigzag layer. You don't have to get too fancy, especially since the 2 inside layers are gonna be covered up. I'm doing a speed round. And then I have some chocolate, and I'm gonna grate it onto the top of the cream mixture, just to give a nice little chocolate layer. Whoop. All right, that's good for that layer. So now I'm gonna do 2 more layers exactly like the first one. First cake, and I'll flatten it, sweetened coffee, the cream mixture, and a grating of chocolate. Then exactly the same again a final time, and it's done. The reason I put this overhang of plastic wrap in the pan is so that I can really lightly cover the tiramisu and it won't smush the top of that beautiful cream cheese topping / filling. All right, so this is gonna go in the fridge. You need to give it 4 hours at least to chill completely and let all the layers kind of become one with one another. And I happen to have a gorgeous second version so that I can show you how this is all served. But look at that, you just pull the plastic away and it's like nothing ever happened. So the second reason to have this overhang in the pan is so you can grip the sides, say a little prayer, and lift the whole cake out. There we go. So then I've got a pretty platter, depending on who you're serving it to. You don't have to put it on a platter, but it's always nice. So I'll just get the end and kind of pull the plastic wrap away as I set it on there. Goodness gracious, look at this layered tiramisu cake. That shortcut frozen pound cake is such a brilliant way to pull this cake together. So I want to show you how beautiful these layers are. Cut a nice slice. Oh gosh, that looks miraculous. It's gonna be tough to go back to the original. This is so much easier. An easy chocolate sheet cake with vanilla bean frosting we all love. So I'm mixing the dry ingredients, and it's just 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of sugar, and a pinch of salt. And I'll mix this together. Alex, Paige, and I could all make this cake in our sleep, blindfolded. It's just one of those things. We've made it so many times, it's a total no-brainer for us. Okay, so the dry ingredients are mixed, and then I have a second mixture in the saucepan, 2 sticks of butter and 4 heaping tablespoons of cocoa. And I melted the butter and stirred in the cocoa, and I'm gonna turn up the heat just a little bit. And I have a kettle with hot water, so I'll measure a cup, and it goes right into the butter and cocoa mixture. And then I just turn up the heat enough for it to bubble up, and then as soon as it starts to bubble, I'll just turn it off. So I'm gonna let that sit for just a second while I mix together the wet ingredients. So it's a half a cup of buttermilk, 2 eggs, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a teaspoon of baking soda. And if you don't have buttermilk in your fridge, the trick I always do is measure just a little under the amount of buttermilk you need of regular milk, and then add a little splash of regular white vinegar, let it sit for a few minutes, and then you'll have instant buttermilk. All right, so the buttermilk mixture is mixed, so now all 3 of these components get combined into one bowl. So the dry ingredients and the chocolate mixture. And then one thing Nan taught me, and Nan's the one that shared this recipe with me, is stir this mixture just a little bit to cool the chocolate, because otherwise you'll scramble the eggs, and scrambled egg chocolate sheet cake does not sound good, even though there's chocolate involved. Okay, and then the buttermilk mixture can go in. Alrighty, delicious. So I'm gonna stir this around, give me 2 minutes. All right, delicious. As Alex just said, she could just go ahead and eat this bowl with a spoon right now. All right, regular sheet pan. Oh no, I almost forgot. Oops. One little spin I'm gonna put on the chocolate sheet cake recipe is the addition of chocolate chips. I'm using semi-sweet, and you won't have like chunks of chocolate in the cake as much as just a little bit more chocolatey richness. All right, so then the batter goes into the sheet pan, and I like to pour it to cause minimum need to spread. So I kind of try to get it to spread as I pour. But you definitely want to push it into the corners, even out the surface so you don't have like a lopsided cake. Although, if you do, that's just part of the charm of a homemade chocolate sheet cake. Ooh, that looks delicious. Okay, let's put it into the oven, Paige. I know, it just smells so good to make a chocolate sheet cake. 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Delicious. So that's all cool, as you can tell, since I just picked it up. So I'm gonna make the vanilla bean frosting. Woo! Now I'm adding everything to the bowl at once, just to kind of speed things along. So I've got 2 sticks of butter, powdered sugar, milk, And instead of vanilla, I'm using vanilla bean just to be a little on the fancy side. It's basically the caviar from one vanilla bean. And then I've got my trusty mixer. Do you trust me? Speaking of
trust
trusty,
you.
I don't know.
But if this blows up on you,
I'm gonna start really low. And then I'm just gonna keep mixing, and as everything incorporates, I'm gonna speed this up so it's nice and fluffy and creamy and dreamy and heavenly and wonderful. That's just gonna take me about 30 seconds. All right. Oh, look at this page. How delicious does that look? All right, there's no better way to frost a cake than to just plop the icing right on top.
Wow, that looks amazing.
I mean, we need to cut into this, right?
Yeah,
Come
I
on.
feel like- No, I won't. Here, can I try the other side?
Eat it off my finger. Eat it off my finger.
Oh my, you're
Kidding.
so
Oh, I'm just kidding. That is absolutely incredible. Wow, I can't say enough about it. Chocolate sheet cake, vanilla bean icing, make it soon. It's Clementine sprinkle cake. How good does that sound? So I started with a confetti cake mix, and I added a cup of water, 3 eggs, half a cup of vegetable oil. I can't see anymore, it's really bad. And then I juiced enough clementines to get about 1/4 cup of juice. And I'm just gonna use half of the juice in the cake mix, and I'm gonna save the other half for the frosting. And then the zest from the clementines. And then I will just whisk all this together and try not to eat the batter because I know it's gonna be really tasty. So I have 2 round cake pans, and I'm gonna pour half of the batter in each pan. I really love cake mix based cakes these days. There might have been a time in my life when I wouldn't say I judged the use of cake mixes, but I kind of thought they were a little bit of a cop-out at one time in my life. Not anymore. I think they're wonderful, and especially if you doctor them up with sort of elevated ingredients. Enter the clementines. I think they can be really, really special. Okay, let's go to the oven, Alex.
How long are we baking?
We be baking the cakes at 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. Cooking is a journey. Okay, so the cake is out of the oven and it's been cooling on a wire rack. And I have been mixing together 3 sticks of butter with 6 cups of powdered sugar. I'm gonna add the rest of the yummy clementine juice and the rest of the zest. And then a little bit of orange food coloring. I'm using gel. We'll add that much and see what the color looks like. I didn't want to turn it bright orange, but since it is clementine, I just wanted to have a little hint of color to the icing. All right, I'm gonna add a little more food coloring, and then I'm gonna mix this together until it's totally perfect. Okay, Alex. Bang. So what do you think?
It looks so good.
It does,
So
look,
orange
it's
and
fluffy.
pretty.
Well, I stopped short of adding enough orange because I always just take it a little step too far when it comes to food coloring, and I always regret that. Okay, so I'm gonna start with kind of the larger, thicker piece of cake, and always put it face down, at least I do. And then a big old plop of the frosting. Yum, yum, yum. One more plop. I want to be able to see it. I'm going to warn you, I'm going to make a mess today.
What's new?
I mean, seriously, it is. It's been a messy day already. All right, let's spread it out. The little slight orange color just makes it seem so special, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, so now the second. And then I like to kind of go around and smush the sides in a little bit. Yum, okay. And then, you know what has to happen? Now I'm gonna put the rest of the icing on and put it all over the tops and sides. All right. I am not a professional cake decorator, but I sure care about the flavor of the cake, and this is going to be so good. So the cake itself has sprinkles in it, so I'm gonna actually cover the top with sprinkles because sprinkles make people happy. Don't you think, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
I love sprinkles. This is my favorite kind too. Okay, actually I'm gonna go a little heavier. Why not? And then, so people know exactly what kind of cake you just made, I'm gonna arrange little clementines. I cut little circles and then you just kind of let them, curl them here and there on top of the cake. You can sort of concentrate them on the center. Aww,
So cute.
so adorable. Well, Clementine sprinkle cake, chocolate poke cakes. I'm adding chocolate chips to a double boiler, which is nothing more than a heat-proof glass bowl over a pan of simmering water. And then I'm gonna pour in sweetened condensed milk. This is already heating up, and this is just a good way to heat up any kind of chocolate mixture without burning the chocolate. So I took a big old shortcut with these poke cakes because I knew I had to make two, and I used really good quality chocolate cake box mix. So here's how you make a poke cake. Watch this, Alex. You take a wooden spoon and you basically just poke it. So the cakes are poked. I'm gonna check on the chocolate chip mixture. This really thin chocolatey mixture gets, can you see?
Oh yeah.
Gets poured over the poke cake, and look, you want it to go into those holes. This looks like a dream. Gorgeous glossiness. But a proper poke cake, in my opinion, has some kind of frosting. So it's not the most gourmet choice, but I'm gonna make a really yummy chocolate whipped topping. And I'm starting with 2 packages of chocolate instant pudding. And then to the pudding, I'll add some unsweetened cocoa powder. Trust me on this, it's so exciting. So this is instant pudding. And the glory of instant pudding is you just add milk, whisk it together, and then this is actually gonna thicken up into a luscious chocolate pudding. And I am gonna break out the non-dairy whipped topping. I softened it overnight in the fridge, and the great thing about this stuff is it's so easy. You don't have to whip cream and sugar. Get in here. Look. Oh, baby. So I will take half of this and you just smear this chocolate topping all over. All right, chocolate overload poke cakes. Pumpkin rum cake with maple whipped cream. It starts with 3 cups of flour and 2 cups of sugar, and then just 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And that's it for the dry. I'll just give it a little stir. Okay, that's all mixed together. So that's the dry ingredients. Now I'll get started on the wet. I've got 1/2 cup of buttermilk, and I'll add 2 eggs and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Now I'll add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Hey, I just measured vanilla for the first time in about 7 years. I usually just splash it in there. It's Thanksgiving, it's a special occasion. And then 1/2 teaspoon of maple extract. And then I'll just use a fork to whisk up the eggs. I love Thanksgiving anyway, but having a little Friendsgiving celebration on the side just adds to how much I love Thanksgiving. It's just great to get together with girlfriends every now and then. Now I'm gonna move over to the stove. I have a saucepan with 2 sticks of salted butter, and I'm gonna add a can of pumpkin puree. This is probably my favorite shortcut Thanksgiving ingredient. Now I wanna add to that pumpkin-y flavor, so I'm gonna add a couple of teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. How good is this gonna be? And I'll give this a stir while it starts to heat up. I think Friendsgivings are so much fun because You can have a little bit of fun with what you make. You don't have to stick to the traditional Thanksgiving dishes if you don't want to. Okay, that's all whisked together. So I've got a pot of water. It's just about to boil. And I'm gonna measure 3/4 of a cup. And pour it into the saucepan. So we really have two wet ingredients going on, the buttermilk mixture and the pumpkin mixture. Rum cakes always remind me of my mother-in-law, Nan. She made a rum cake around the holidays every year. That was the best thing I had ever tasted when she first made it for me. I have never gotten that cake out of my mind. So delicious. Okay, the pumpkin mixture is nice and smooth and very hot, so I'm gonna turn off the heat and I'll put all of this together to make the cake batter. The first thing I like to do is pour in the pumpkin mixture. So I'll grab the buttermilk mixture. You just want to keep folding until you no longer see any hint of the flour. Now I've got a regular bundt pan and I greased and floured it just to make sure that the cake doesn't stick. All right, so now that the batter's in the pan, the action moves to the oven. Baking first. The cake goes into a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes. Then I'll check that it's done by inserting a skewer in the center. Yep, that's good. Then I'll take it out and cool it on the counter in the pan. If you think this pumpkin cake looks good now, just wait till you see it when it's doused in a delicious rum syrup. That's what I'm gonna make now. I've got 2 sticks of salted butter and I just melted them. And I'm adding a cup of sugar and I'll add just a couple of tablespoons of water. The rum comes later. First, I'm gonna make the syrup, which is really easy to make. I'll stir this around. Okay, now I'm gonna raise the heat and this needs to cook for about 3 minutes to thicken, so I'll see you on the other side. Okay, the syrup has been boiling away. So I'm turning the heat off before I add the most important ingredient, a whole cup of rum. This is actually spiced rum, and you want to pour it in slowly so that syrup mixture doesn't get too angry. You don't want to add the rum before the syrup cooks because a lot of that goodness would cook off, and you really want to have this pack a real rum punch. And then just a teaspoon of vanilla. All right, the rum syrup is ready. So now I'll get the cake ready. First thing I'll do is turn the cake out onto a rack. And I hope it came out. Ooh, it sounds promising. Get the rack down and take a look. That's when you're glad you have thoroughly greased and floured the pan. So I've got a wooden skewer and I want the cake to be able to really soak up a lot of this syrup. So I'm just going all around the cake just to give that rum syrup plenty of places to go to. Okay, that looks great. Now, this is a cool trick. Rather than try to pour the syrup on the cake while it's on the rack, I'm gonna pour half of the syrup into the bundt pan, give or take. And then, you guessed it, I'm gonna put the cake back into the pan. Just wanna make sure I line up the grooves. And then, oh my gosh, that syrup is just completely enveloping the cake. Now we can't forget about the bottom of the cake. So you wanna do the same thing with the wooden skewer. And then the rest of the syrup gets poured on top. Okay, now the cake needs to soak up the rum and that's gonna take an hour. Now aside from actually eating the cake, turning it out onto the cake stand is the best part. So I'll turn it over and hopefully all of that syrup has been soaked into the cake. You can't imagine how sticky and delicious this is. My friends are gonna love me this year. I cut everyone a generous slice. I mean, it's Thanksgiving after all. Then it was all about the cream, which is just a cup of heavy cream whipped with a teaspoon of maple syrup. And I finished it with a sprinkle of pumpkin pie spice for some Thanksgiving magic. It's ice cream cake, and it's gonna really hit the spot after everybody's been hauling hay. I started with a frozen store-bought pound cake, and I cut it into 3 slices. I put 1 slice into a loaf pan that had been lined with plastic wrap. Then I covered that slice with a cup of vanilla ice cream. I sprinkled on chopped peanut butter cups, then put on a 2nd slice of pound cake. The next layer of ice cream was chocolate, Todd's favorite. On top of that, I sprinkled some chopped chocolate candies. Then the final layer of cake goes on top, followed by a cup of chocolate chip ice cream. And for the topping, I squeezed chocolate sauce all over the top. This is the kind that hardens as soon as it hits the ice cream. Then I sprinkled on the 2 candies. I let it set for a few seconds, and then I loosely folded the plastic wrap over the cake. Then I put it into the freezer to harden, and I made a whole other cake. This cake is so simple to make, and I'll tell you how to serve it up. So you take the cake out of the freezer, lift it carefully out of the pan, peel back the plastic wrap, and voila, ice cream cake. Look at all those layers of deliciousness. This cake will make you very, very popular.